Praise the Lord!
Well, praise the Lord, and it's Lord who's back with another Lord video, and this time it's Soldiers Duel Battle Tower, which was a pretty cool battle tower, because it was a mono-element battle tower, which is the first, I believe, first tower just to have mono-elements throughout the whole tower, on opening fights and the boss fight as well, which was pretty cool. So if we look at this node right here, which is a fire node, so every enemy here is going to be a fire element, so we can use a weakness element, we can use water, and because we only need one type of element for attack, that means there's extra deck space to load up on support cards, which is pretty cool. And let's talk about the deck I'm using right now. So this is a tank deck. I'm using Sword Saint with a Sephiroth skin. I'm using Chaos, Zac, Wall, and Lord of Hope support card, which is a pretty standard tank deck that I use throughout this whole tower. So on attack, I've got Avalanche Hero with Tifa's skin, and as you can see, I'm using Eden as my attack card, and using 3 Aerith support cards to bump up my prismatic return significantly. And as you can see, I'm capping damage unbroken on those weird spider hand enemy creatures, and which is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm also doing very good damage to the main enemy in the middle, Marilith, which is pretty cool. As you know, Eden's has a Supreme exclusive. It will increase the elemental damage for every drive that you have. So on the starting opening fight with tank deck, I was just driving as many orbs as I can to boost up Eden's damage, like so. And I've cap damage right now, which is pretty cool. So I have ability rising on this job as well, so every time I do successive casts of Eden, the damage will rise slightly. Plus as well, I've got Brave 2 from the Zac Supreme support card, so my damage with Eden is extremely high. Just basically going to wreck everything on this fire node with Eden, which is pretty cool, considering Eden not so long ago was considered the weakest card, pretty much weakest Supreme. I know ZZAT people said that was a terrible card for a long time, but as soon as Eden came out, people thought that was a lot worse. But as you can see, it does a pretty good job right now. It's absolutely destroying this node. So let's talk about my newest Supreme card, because this tower gave me a chance to use my new support Supreme card, which is Zac, which is a card I've been looking forward to ever since it got released on Japan. It did get a buff in Japan, and we got the buffed version of Zac, which is on release, which was pretty cool. So just to recap what Zac does, it will reduce the yellow gauge by 20%. It applies a unique debuff called Genesis, which lowers the break gauge of the enemy by 15%, which is very, very good. And it's also a very good tanking card as well, because it has counter resist, which it's not Supreme exclusive, but I believe it's the only card on global with that now, so it might as well be a Supreme exclusive. So every time you get attacked by an enemy, you will gain 1 drive according to the enemy's type. So say if you have Sword Saint, which can't drive water, and you get attacked by a water enemy, then you get 1 water drive. So that's pretty cool. So just makes Sword Saint an absolute beast when you're tanking, and when you get to higher levels in the tower, then having those drives, which you can't actually get the orbs for, is actually very, very good. And also as well, it has every time you get attacked, you gain an extra 5 points to your ultimate gauge, which isn't exactly groundbreaking, but it's still a very nice ability. And lastly, it'll also apply a couple of debuff effects on you, so it'll apply Debrave and Curse. So unlike Chaos, which applies those for 4 turns, Zac will only apply those debuffs for 3 turns, which is a little bit annoying, but you can use an unenhanced version of Zac to cast square debuffs, so that you can use, say, you could use a square Zac to have a couple of rounds of debuffs, and then you can overwrite that with Chaos, and so you can get 6 turns of Debrave or 6 turns of Curse if you wanted. Tactically, that could give you an advantage on some specific fights, which is pretty cool. And looking at this fight, so it's very simple. So managed to tank the little doggies for a little while, and then just switched to Avalanche Heroine. Spammed a bunch of quickens, using Eden at cap damage, which is pretty ridiculous. Who needs to break really when you can hit maximum damage unbroken? So this Avalanche Heroine job was ridiculously strong. I was quite surprised by how strong it was. In fact, during this tower, 4 out of 5 nodes I was using Avalanche Hero, which is just shows how powerful the job was. If I believe correctly, when this tower came out in Japan, Avalanche Hero wasn't around. So it's another tower that hasn't been balanced for global, which is pretty typical for Mobius. So this is node 221, so in Japan the highest node reached was 170, so we're significantly past what Japan achieved. So I have a strategy for the Cloud fight, so that means that I do need to build up his action gauge slightly, so I'm not going to debuff at the first turn. Plus I have to wait for my support cards to come off cooldown, so I'll just attack him for a little bit and drive for a little bit, because my main strategy is on the 5th turn I want Cloud to activate his limit break, so that means I just need to carefully make sure that he has enough actions on his action points for my strategy to work. But if it sounds complicated, don't worry. It'll be clear very, very soon what I'm intended to do. So I've applied Chaos. I'm looking to get to the last action of Cloud, then our ultimate, which will take away his action because I've applied slow. Switching to my attack deck, spamming my quicken actions, and then I'm just going to do an unbroken attack after I've applied my ultimate to apply crit down. So if you look how much damage I'm doing, I'm hitting max cap, which is pretty cool. And I'll try and trigger Mobius zone so I can do some more attacks. I won't be able to kill Cloud, but then I'll be able to switch back to my tank deck and wait till my cards come off cooldown, then try a similar approach to finish Cloud off. So this is pretty much the standard unbroken approach to Cloud. Earlier in the tower I did lots of break strategies. I was using Rysender, I was using Scharf Richter, I even tried Turk. Tried lots of breaking jobs, but as I got further along in the tower, it's become clear that unbroken strategy was the way to go. It was the most effective strategy, so it's slightly boring, but hell, you have to do what the tower mechanics allow you to do, not what you want to do. So I've switched back to my tank deck after doing significant amounts of damage to Cloud. Took roughly half his health off. So I just want to tank him for remaining turns until my support cards off cooldown. He'll take some bio damage as well. And I want to manipulate his action gauge so that I can activate his limit break next time I do my unbroken spam attack. Because when he hits limit break, his defense will decrease, which means my damage will increase, which is what I want, because my crit resist down debuff has come off, as well as on guard, so I'll be doing less damage. So I'll need to look at any opportunity I can to maximize damage. Definitely activating Cloud's Limit Break is one way to increase damage. So here we go, just need to tank Cloud to his last action, although he does hit pretty hard at this level. I can still tank him with Sword Saint. Sword Saint's still a beast. So here we go, getting close to, there we go. So spam wall, switch to my attack deck. I've got 9 extra actions from my 3 Arifs, and I can just begin a Unbroken Eden spam. It's a pretty simple strategy. But I've activated Cloud's Limit Break, so his defense has decreased. So I'm still doing significantly high amounts of damage, even though Cloud doesn't have Unguard or Crit Resist down, as I did when I was attacking him earlier. And this fight's finishing up. So that's how you do Fire Cloud. You use Eden. And it's a pretty easy fight. Much easier than trying to use Zizan and going for a broken strategy, which I did try up to about node 210. But then it was just so much easier just to switch to Avalanche Heroine and Eden. So that's that one done. And we are back again, this time on node 232. So this is the water node, so we're using the same tank deck as we did on the previous node. So we're using Sword Saint with a Sephiroth skin. And Sword Saint can't drive water orbs, but because I'm using Zack, which is new Supreme card, he has counter resist, so every time I get hit by a water enemy I gain 1 water drive, so Sword Saint can tank very effectively on this node even though he can't drive water orbs because of Zack, which is pretty cool. And then for my attack deck I'm using Avalanche Hero again with Tifa skin, but this time instead of Eden I'm using Dunfer X, so I'm using the Fire Duncan card, Extreme Ifra X. So that's a little bit more tricky to use because it is single target, and obviously on this opening node you do have 3 enemies, so this is a fairly difficult fight. Because I'll spam actions on the Tonberry, but then I still need to kill the 2 fans again, so my strategy will be I need to destroy the Tonberry and deal some damage to one of the flans as well before I switch back to my tank deck. So I can tank one of these flans with Sword Saint, but I can't tank 2 of the flans, so if I'm tanking 2 of the flans I'm dead. So I have to make sure that I prioritise killing one of the flans after killing Tonberry, which you'll see is a little bit difficult because flans are pretty tanky at these higher levels. Did consider using Zeromus, the other Fire Monk attack card on this node, because it is AoE, so it would have been more useful on this node. But on this fight I should say, but in the second round it would have made that fight even more tricky, so I didn't use that card. And the Tonberry's almost finished, so I'm not attacking the Tonberry anymore because Poison will finish him off. So there's no point wasting 1 action on him to finish him off. Poison will do that. So I'm focusing my attention on the flan, trying to deal as much damage as I can before I have to switch back to my tank deck. So my strategy for this opening fight will be to take out one of these flans so that I can tank one remaining flan with my tank deck until I can reapply debuffs. So I've had to change back to my tank deck, even though I didn't have to, because the enemy used slime, so that is a random attack. You don't know when it's going to use slime or not. Slime's pretty much a wasted action by the flan. Apologies, this is not the most exciting fight, but this is what happens at high levels in the towers. The opening fights can drag for quite some time, especially when you have multiple enemies and you're only using a single target attack card. Your fear will be gone in a flash. So I've reapplied stun, and I'm going to wait till next turn when I can reapply slow to both of the flans, then buff with my support cards, get some extra actions and take out one of those flans. Not much more to say on this opening fight, really.
Not yet. I'm just getting started.
Where did you find the strength? Your fear will be gone in a flash.
There we go, fight's getting a little bit more interesting now. A bit more exciting than watching paint dry. So, I've got enough actions now to finish off one of the flans, which makes the fight significantly easier. Because you can tank one of the flans, but two tanks using two Blizzards in succession will finish off my tank, which is not good, so I want to avoid that at all costs.
I'm gonna win.
So here we go, flan's almost dead. Look at that heroic victory right there. Switched to my tank deck just to restore my ultimate gauge, and also because I didn't want to activate Mobius Zone. Not at this point. I want to activate Mobius Zone in the second round, which is an important factor in my strategy.
How much can you take?
All right, let's go. Not yet. I'm just getting started.
So last flan, thank God, because this round is pretty boring, I have to say. If you've killed one flan, you've killed them all, really.
The strength.
And there we go. That's the flan finished off with poison, thank God. So second round. So this is significantly harder. So you have to prioritize killing the Blizzard Dragon in the first round, because his Veil makes things extremely tricky, and he does hit pretty hard, so trying to tank both Nestlig and the Storm Dragon is it's not exactly what you want to be doing. So I've waited till Blizzard Dragon used Rime Reef, his attack, so that he has only one more action on this turn. So switch over to my attack deck. and focus my attacks on the Blizzard Dragon, so I will hit Mobius zone as well, so I get even more attacks. Which should give me enough actions to destroy the Blizzard Dragon, I should say, on the first turn. So extremely Frax doing extremely nice amounts of damage to the Blizzard Dragon. And once Blizzard Dragon is down, the Nestslug will be extremely easy to tank. Can tank that on my attack deck, it's not a problem. Don't need to switch to Sword Saint for Nestslug, because I can manipulate his mechanics to pop him in his shell. So I've just applied Sephiroth's debuffs to the Nestslug, which is good, because I really wanted to get weakened on Nestslug. And Nestslug fight's pretty easy, so Nestslug's mechanics, as soon as he's hit 5 times in a row, then he'll go back into his shell. So when he pops out of his shell, I'll use my Guardian Force card, which is fast cast. Then attack 4 times in a row, which will pop him in his shell on the 4th attack. So that's 5 attacks and all, including the Guardian Force fast cast attack. So there we go. So I keep doing this until the Nestslug's dead. Pretty simple strategy.
I'm gonna win.
So there we go, so this fight's finishing up, and the Nestslug is down. So this strategy is pretty similar to the previous node, so I'm going to attack Cloud several times to increase his action gauge, then I'm going to apply Chaos, take him to his last action, use Sephiroth's ultimate to apply Slow, which eliminates Cloud's last action, and I'm going to use my support cards, switch to my attack deck, going to use my Avalanche Heroine's ultimate on the Tifa skin, so that applies crit resist down. And I'm going to spam my quicken actions and then just nuke Cloud Unbroken. So here I haven't applied Chaos just yet, because I've been just increasing Cloud's action gauge, because I want him to reach his limit break when I've activated my Mobius zone, because when Cloud activates his limit break, his defense does decrease. Okay, so I've increased the Cloud's action gauge enough, so I'm playing Chaos and starting the main part of my strategy.
To the promised land.
So I'm taking Cloud to his last action. So I'm getting ready to ultimate very, very soon.
Your fear
There we go.
is gone.
Apply my support cards.
It's time.
As you can see, Zack does raise ultimate gauge on use by 20 points, which is pretty cool. Helps me get my ultimate off on my attack deck a little bit easier. So I've applied crit resist down from that ultimate. Now I'm just going to do an unbroken spam. But unlike the previous node, I'm going to finish off Cloud in the next turn, which is pretty cool, if I do say so myself. So that means I'll activate Mobius Gauge on the next turn. So I do have Wall's Divine Shield, so I can just about tank one of Cloud's attacks unless it's an extremely strong multi-hit attack. And I was able to survive that attack, so I can keep on attacking and trigger my Mobius Gauge. So I can go into Mobius Zone and finish off Cloud. So once Cloud goes into his limit break, his defense decreases, which is pretty cool. His break defense also decreases as well, so it is slightly easy to break him as well during his limit break, but not really too concerned with that. And there we go, so that's how you do Water Cloud, pretty easy. And we're back again, so this is one of the higher nodes that are completed, so this was node 233. So tank deck's identical to every node for this tower, so Sephiroth skin with Sword Saint. So attack, I'm using Surprise Surprise, Avalanche Heroine again on Tifa skin. And this time I'm using Yasma as my attacking Supreme card, which is not surprising because it's an Earth node. This is quite a tricky node because when I switch to my attack deck, I won't be able to kill Buffalo in one turn that I'm attacking it, so I'll have to switch to my tank deck and tank a few of its attacks. So if you see how much damage I'm doing with Yasma, it's let's have a look. Yeah, so it's doing very high amounts of damage, and I do have ability Ryzen as well, so the more attacks I do, the higher my damage will be. It's gradually creeping up damage wise. So on earlier floors I was able to kill the Buffalo on the second turn, but as you can see, the higher the tower you go, the more HP the enemies get, so tactics that worked out very well early in the tower, you have to adapt and adjust to progress in the tower. Fortunately, Buffalo's fairly easy to tank with Sword Saint, especially when you have in Max Earth Drive and Max Earth Resist. So not much more to say on this fight, so I'm just going to tank for Buffalo for a little bit and then switch to my attack deck once I can reapply debuffs. And not much more to say on this fight really, so I'll pick back up on my commentary in the next round.
Not yet. I'm just getting started.
despair. Your fear will be gone in a flash. To the promised land.
Don't worry. Just leave it to me.
Did you find this strength? How much can you take?
This'll be a nice warm-up.
Taste the blade and its glow.
You're not gonna get careless fighting me, right?
Stop me.
Deep breaths.
Comes one with me.
You're not gonna get careless fighting me, right?
Stop me. How much can you take?
Okay, so it's the end of probably the most boring fight of the whole tower, so if you're still with me and watching and listening, well done. Deserve a medal for getting through that one. So this second round is extremely easy.
I want you to beg for forgiveness. Ruination to all.
Alright, let's go!
So I'm just using Substrike a few times just to manipulate my Mobius gauge because I want to make sure that I don't activate my Mobius zone in this fight because it would be a waste.
This'll be a nice warm-up.
As this is a relatively simple and easy fight. Don't need to waste my Mobius zone on this one.
I'm gonna win.
The depths of darkness.
This'll be a nice warm-up. Deep breaths. And it's power.
So this fight's finishing up. So I've made sure this went to the next round, boss fight, with all my support cards on cooldown, which is pretty good. It's definitely what you want to do. And my Mobius gauge is where I want it to be, which is even better. So pretty similar strategy to what I did for previous 2 fights, apart from I'm just going to start off by using my ultimate, so I'm applying crit resist down to the enemy. So I'm not going to drag the fight out by increasing the action gauge too much, but I'll still be able to manipulate it enough to trigger the limit break for when I want to kill Cloud. So I've applied my ultimate, removed Cloud's last action, so I'm going to switch over to my attack deck, start my nuke barrage. So as you can see, the amount of damage I'm going to be doing is going to be very significant. So on this setup I don't have Zac as my support card, but with ability rising, with a succession of nukes, I can eventually get my attack to cap damage, which is pretty cool. So by giving up Zac, I've just prioritized having another 5 actions from my support card. If you're capping damage unbroken, you don't really need Brave 2, you're not really going to miss it. You're going to be doing more damage with an extra 5 actions. So it's always a really nice sight to see when you're hitting max damage cap unbroken. On a boss fight no less, that's pretty cool. So I'm going to switch back to my tank deck.
Don't worry, just leave it to me.
Then I'm going to wait till my support cards come off cooldown. And then I'm going to do one more unbroken barrage attack to finish Cloud off.
I bring you despair.
Now things will be just fine.
Yes, I have to. How much can you take?
Now you don't have to worry.
To the promised land. To the promised land.
Not yet. I'm just getting started.
Stop me.
Deep breaths.
So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to manipulate Cloud so that manipulate his action gauge so that he triggers his limit break, which he just did. So I'll wait till the last action, which is coming up very soon.
It's time. Ruination to all.
So then I can spam quickens and switch to my attack deck.
Don't worry, just leave it to me.
So Cloud has activated his limit break, so his defense is decreased. So even though we don't have crit resist down or on guard, we should still do some nice damage to Cloud in his limit break. And with ability rising, every attack will deal a little bit more damage on the next cast. So when you're really spamming your actions and you have a lot of actions to nuke in succession, then ability rising is very good and it'll boost the attack output, which is very good, especially if you're dropping an important buff like Brave 2. So fight's finishing up. This is how you do Earth Node. You you spam Yasmat with Avalanche Heroine. So the reason why I slowed down the speed was because I was just seeing if I could get enough nukes to kill Cloud, because if I didn't do enough damage to kill Cloud, then I'd have to switch back to my tank deck, which these higher levels, once the debuffs wear off Cloud, once Debrave and Curse are gone, then it becomes significantly harder to tank Cloud. It is possible, but he can also one-shot you as well with several abilities. So we're on a brand new node, so we're on node 224, and this is a light node. So I'm using a completely different strategy for this node than I have for every other node. So I'm not using Avalanche Heroine for this node, I'm using Camphor, so that's ex-monk job, and I'm using, still am using Tifa Skin on that job, but I'm using Griever as my attacking Supreme, because once you pair that up with Zac, it is it's an extremely effective combination, because with the Mantra buff, Griever can do nice damage to the yellow gauge, and eventually with enough spam attacks of Griever you can break the Cyclopses, which is pretty cool. And with Zac as well, it gives you Brave too, so you'd even do even more damage with Griever Unbroken. But even more significantly is that you're applying Genesis debuff with Zac, so the break gauge of Cyclops is reduced by 15%, so I can break these Cyclopses in the second turn. Without Zac I really wouldn't be able to do that, so I was able to use a strategy that not many other players in this tower could use, which is always nice. So on the second turn I'll be able to break one of the Cyclopses and finish them off. Won't be able to break both the Cyclopses because I just didn't get very good prismatic RNG, which is how it goes, but one Cyclops is easy to tank. So for the whole tower I was just using this combination of Griever with Zac on Camphor, using a break strategy. I did notice on the tower that other people were using UB and using Hero of Despair, I believe, HOF, which is a pretty powerful combination, but I don't imagine it would be able to clear these higher floors, because the Cyclops is a pretty tricky enemy to kill. It is Unguard immune, and there are two of them as well, which makes it more difficult to kill both of them with UB. There we go, so that's one Cyclops down, the other one will be easier to tank. I've had better prismatic RNG than I would have been able to have broken both of the Cyclopses, but it's just how it goes. It'll just take a little bit longer. And so I'm just going to tank the Cyclops until it changes back to light element attribute, and then I'm going to kill with Griever, so not much more to say on this fight. I'll start commentating again when we get to the second round.
fighting me, right?
Everything returns to plan.
Alright, let's go!
Can you stop me? Taste the blade, Zero.
Don't worry, just leave it to me.
Receive defeat.
This'll be a nice warm-up.
Where did you find the strength? Your fear will be gone in a flash.
Alright, let's go! Yeah!
Okay, that's the end of one of the longest fights of my life, so moving on to the second round now. So it's a very easy node to complete with Griever. I can only imagine how hard this node must be at higher levels using UB, single target attack card. It's definitely not something I'd prefer to try. So pretty simple strategy. I'm just going to debuff the curls and
Not yet. I'm just
then switch to my attack deck. So once the curls use their charge up attack, it will pretty much one-shot me, so it's not something I want to tank with Sword Saint. But with Griever I'll be able to break both of the curls, so once the curls are broken they won't be able to use their charge up attack. Unless they want to waste an action and charge it up again.
Alright, let's go!
So a pretty simple fight. I'm just going to use Griever with a Manta update. I will be able to do some nice little amounts of damage to the yellow gauge and eventually break.
Breaking my limits!
Where did you find the strength?
You're not being a bit careless. is fighting me, right?
So we're finally at Cloud, so I'm going to use a very similar strategy to what I did on the previous nodes with Avalanche Heroine, but slight difference is that when Cloud does go into his limit break, his break defense is decreased, so I'll be able to break Cloud with by using Griever. But otherwise the strategy is pretty much identical to what I was doing with Avalanche Heroine.
Taste the blade of a ruination to all.
Don't worry.
So I'm going to do Unbroken Spam Attack. But I don't want to break Cloud because I want to break Cloud on the very last turn where he has Debarrier 2. But I just want to try and get as much unbroken damage as I can. And take his yellow gauge down to a point where it'll be very easy to break.
Now I'm mad. Planet's power.
So I've switched back to my tank deck, which is good because that finishing touch probably would have killed off my attack deck if I didn't switch back in time. So now I'm just going to tank Cloud until my support cards come off cooldown. So I can use Substrike to make sure that I don't hit my Mobius zone, but I just have to be very careful that I don't do too many. And break Cloud. Because I have 40% quick break, so I'm getting very close to the point where I'm going to break Cloud.
Now you don't have to worry.
Do what you want.
Okay, some strategies finishing up, so this is the turn where I want to take Cloud to the last action again. Then Limit Break's activated, which is exactly what I want. So Cloud's break defense has decreased as well as his defense, so it should be extremely easy to break.
Alright, let's go.
Your fear will be gone in a flash. It's time.
Here we go, switch to my attack deck.
Don't worry. Just leave it to me.
And we've broken Cloud, so my damage jumps up significantly. So my strategy is to hit my Quicken support card to get enough actions to be able to go into Mobius zone and finish off Cloud unbroken. I don't want to go to the next turn, because if I go to the next turn then I'll lose Debarrier 2 and my damage will drop off significantly and I won't be able to kill Cloud. So I have enough actions to go into Mobius zone to finish Cloud off, which is pretty cool.
Sorry if this stings a little.
So I got pretty bad prismatic RNG, so I had to ultimate to regain my orbs. And here we go, so we've hit Mobius zone, so I'm going to finish off Cloud unbroken. Let's see if I do enough damage to kill Cloud. So we're getting pretty close to the end of the fight, so I have 2 more attacks with Griever. Can I kill Cloud? So I'll switch back to my tank deck and use a Substrike. Is this going to be the one to finish off Cloud? No. But that's fine because I have Poison effect, so that will take 5% off Cloud's HP, which is enough to kill him. So that's good. So that's how you do the Light Node. So we're back again for the very last node, and this is node 225, so this is the Dark Node. So tanking again, we're using Sephiroth and Sword Saint, and attack we are using Avalanche Heroine. I had problems even saying that, and Tifa Skin, but using Duncan. So pretty much identical to how I was tanking in the previous nodes. Attack wise, pretty much identical to what I was doing in the previous nodes. So this first fight is extremely simple. So simple in fact there's nothing really much more to say. I'll just stop commentating and then start again in the second round. So catch you in a bit. And I'm back again, given my colour commentary. So, second round, there are 5 enemies, and we are using Duncan to attack, which is single target attack, so card. So, I wouldn't say this node, this fight rather, is difficult, but can be annoying, especially because those soldiers are stun immune. So, you definitely want to focus on taking those out straight away. So I've used Sephiroth's ultimate to debuff 2 of those soldiers now, so I'll switch to my attack deck and take out the soldiers that have applied on guard to, because they'll go down a bit quicker. So Duncan on Avalanche Heroine Unbroken is extremely strong. So it's just ripping apart these little soldiers. And once the soldiers are down, the 2 Doom Eyes are pretty simple to kill. They're extremely easy to tank on my with my Sword Saint, even though my Sword Saint can't drive Dark Orbs. I do have Zack, which has counter resist, so every time the big eyes will hit me, then I'll drive 1 Dark Orb, so makes it pretty easy to tank them. So that's one of the big advantages of having Zack, is that you can do a lot of off-element tanking. Just put Zack on Sword Saint, you can pretty much tank anything, I should say. So as you can see, my Sword Saint tank is doing very well with 5 dark drives. Tank those 3 attacks very easily. So as soon as the soldier is down, then it'll be extremely easy to then just focus attention on the 2 big eyes. There we go, so all the soldiers are down. So with Zack, this is a pretty simple fight. So if you don't have Zack and you can't drive Dark Orbs, then it's going to be extremely tricky to tank this round. But didn't really have to experience that problem with Zack, so I can't complain. So Substrike to finish one of the big eyes off. And only 1 left, which is pretty cool. So I'll spam my support cards, change to my attack deck, and I'll do enough damage to the big eye, but I won't kill it outright because I want to drag the fight a little bit more, so that when I start the boss fight I have my support cards on cooldown. So now I just have to drag the fight for a couple of turns. So Cloud again, so we're in the final boss fight for this tower video. So I've applied Chaos debuffs. Just going to use Substrike just to reduce the Mobius gauge ever so slightly. And yeah, exactly the same tactic I did before, so I'm just going to take Cloud to his last action. Use Sephiroth's ultimate, because his slow will take away his last action. Buff my support cards. And switch my attack deck, ultimate, buff my support cards there, and then just do a spam attack. So very slightly different in that I'm not going to hit my Mobius zone on this spam attack, but I'll get pretty close to it, but I'll switch back to my tank deck, and then I'll use Substrike for some extra attacks with Duncan. That's another strategy. You can either go straight into your Mobius zone for your first round of attacks, or you can just switch back to tank and use Substrike, which is what I did here. So the rest of the fight's going to be pretty simple to understand, especially if you saw my previous boss fight. So I'll talk a bit more generally about the tower. So this was a pretty fun tower. Mono element tower was pretty cool. It's a very straightforward tower. It's just a shame there were so many bugs that prevented so many players from fully taking part in this tower. Especially if you were using Apple, then you were pretty much screwed on this tower because you couldn't even log into the game, which was disappointing. So this tower probably had fewer people than previous towers. Also at the end of the tower as well, there was a bug with wall, so you didn't get the bonus to elemental damage, increased elemental damage, which was annoying to say the least, because when I got to 234 in the tower, I did want to climb a few more levels. I did want to get to 240 in the tower, but because of that bug, I had to call it quits for the tower, which was a bit disappointing because I do like to play the towers, but can't really complain too much because I was so far ahead of everyone else that no one else could catch up. So I got a chance to take it easy for the last 2 days in the tower, which is always good and appreciated by my fiance, who spent more time with me. So getting close to the end of this Cloud fight. So Cloud's just activated his limit break, and I'm almost dead. So I just need to ultimate and hope that he doesn't do a strong attack. And he doesn't, so I survive. And so I'm gonna get to the point where Cloud only has one action left, then I'm going to use my support cards and switch to my attack deck to finish off Cloud. So fight's finishing up. Hope you enjoyed the tower video. It's always nice to do a tower video and do some commentary. Hopefully you guys found it informative and useful, and hopefully you learned a few new tricks watching my video that you didn't ordinarily know. And it looks like it'll be an exciting time in November. November calendar is pretty cool with 2 new Supremes, Supreme Ticket, 3 new Legends, and Extreme Multiplayer. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty fun time in November. I might just do a separate video, sort of a calendar review. I've never done one of those before, so that could be fun. And you guys might be interested in my thoughts about the November calendar. But that's it for this tower video. Hope you enjoyed it, and this is Lord signing off.